I've been following the correspondence back and forth, and I would like our legal department to perhaps comment on this. If this charter provision supersedes this broadcasting policy that I'd never seen cross our desks here, not clear where that came from, but I'd like staff to comment on this, please.
Okay, so to our solicitor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
So what I can advise is I believe this is in regard to a situation that happened earlier this week regarding a property standards committee. Property Standards Committee meeting, that is. Now, as the council knows, this is a quasi-judicial hearing. It's different than our other advisory committees of council.
Just maybe a little closer to the microphone.
Sorry, is that better?
That's great, thank you.
Okay, is that better?
Yep.
And so I won't get into too much of the details, but it's a court-like process, as you know, and there's policy in terms of whether those proceedings can be broadcast. There was a decision of the chair made following submissions in terms of whether that broadcasting could take place, given the information that they had before them at the time, and the chair made a ruling in terms of whether that broadcasting, based on the information they had, could continue. And at some point during those proceedings, the individual was asked to leave because the chair didn't feel that they were complying with their request to stop broadcasting based on the information that they had. So that's the incident. We don't think that this is anything unusual. We certainly would like to meet with the individual to speak to them in terms of what happened, if that's their desire. We're happy that staff have made that offer to discuss the situation, and we're happy to go forward on that basis.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Green?
So this was not a policy that was pre-approved here at council. This was at the will and pleasure of the chair. Did I hear that correctly?
Andrea?
Through the mayor to the councillor, it is a policy of the Property Standards Committee. It is not a policy of this council.
So that the Property Standards Committee approves their own policies as it relates to broadcasting as a subcommittee or quasi-judicial subcommittee of City Council. Is that correct?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, so the Property Standards Committee actually operates and governs their own procedures based on the Statutory Power of Procedures Act. So it's legislation that allows them to govern their own proceedings, so what happens in their hearings. So it's that authority that gives them the right to say how to interpret the policy. They do have a policy that they've approved.
So under, I think, a subsection 3H or 2H, there's a list of what is included and what's not included. And it's your interpretation that constitutionally, based on the charter, that trumps section 2? It's
not. So the charter in this case, I mean, all levels of law go through the charter, but in terms of this, the Statutory Powers of Procedures Act, so they have the right to interpret a policy based on the information that they have. Certainly, it's our standard process is that those types of hearings are open to the public and that broadcasting is permitted. That's the default. In certain situations, that charter balance allows us to close those proceedings on certain basis if personal information is being provided. So you may recall from time to time, people with sensitive issues, personal information about where they live or the type of housing that they're dealing with, come to council and are looking to maybe not have some of that information publicly broadcast. So the policy gives that hearing, the council or the committee, the right to close that hearing in certain circumstances, and they are limited. And that's the decision that the committee made in that instance, based on the information that they have. And it's always a challenge to know exactly what happened. I wasn't there, but based on what I have been told, it was a reasonable decision of the chair. And obviously, it's a decision of the committee to govern their own process. It's separate from council and separate from all of our other public meetings.
And so is the definition of broadcast clearly articulated in the bylaw?
The policy itself doesn't contain a specific definition of broadcast. There is court decisions on what that means, but it's open to interpretation of what that is.
Okay, fair enough. My last question then being, is it through you to our legal, newly seated legal, do you believe that this decision in any way created risk for this corporation?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, in terms of assessing that, I mean, until I see the decision and know exactly what had transpired, I can't comment on that. If that's something the councillor would like us to look at further, I'm happy to do that.
Asked another way, is the fact that this quasi-judicial subcommittee is able to set their own rules at the will and pleasure of the chair, is council indemnified by that?
Madam Solicitor.
You know what, I'm going to have to get a better understanding of that question in terms of where that sits for us. I mean, it's a decision of that committee. Where those relationships are, I will need to get a better understanding of that to be able to answer that question.
I think, my apologies, Mr. Mayor, and I think the question is fairly clear, and maybe I'll restate it a different way. Is the fact that this subcommittee, quasi-judicial property standards committee, is the fact that they can set their own bylaws and rule at the pleasure of the chair, does that release the corporation of the City of Hamilton from liability should this be pursued in legal course?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. So, and I'm not trying to evade the question in any way. I want to better understand the committee structure in terms of our indemnification of them. My understanding is that if the decision is appealed, legal services would normally defend that decision. But in terms of the insurance and the indemnification, I'll get back to you on that.
Councillor Green.
Okay. I was kind of bewildered watching the exchanges back and forth. There was a lot of ambiguity, lack of clarity, and, given lots of conversation, robust conversation around freedom of speech in today's society, I think it's one I'll be watching closely. Thank you.
Okay. Andrea, do you want to add to that?
Mr. Mayor, through the councillor, recognizing we have a relatively new city solicitor here and working with Rose, I've kind of been middleman in some of the discussions. So if I may, can I add to the information that was provided by the legal department directly to me? Would it be all right with you through the chair to provide additional information that was provided to me by the legal department?
Okay.
Okay. So the legal department indicated that policy is intended to respect the rights of parties to a full and fair hearing, allowing the chair and committee to refuse permission if, according criteria set out in the policy, it may interfere with their ability to make their case to committee. And the legal department felt strongly that the policy is similar to policies of other courts and tribunals across Canada, including the Ontario Municipal Board, and they gave very specific examples. They also made note that it is not subject to the rules of this council or the Ontario Municipal Board. As Nicole had stated, it's the Statutory Powers and Procedure Act that governs that body, and so should there be complaints, they don't come, you can put them through to the clerk first, but they wouldn't be proceeding with this council. They could go to the ombudsman, or their decisions could be referred to Superior.
Okay, thanks to you.
So just for the public record, does this have anything at all to do with accreditation or lack of accreditation? If it had been another media, would the same rules apply in any particular way?
Yes, the same rules would apply to everybody.
Okay.
There's no concern about that.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Whitehead.
We got to get this cleared up. Do we have accreditation for any media currently with the City of Hamilton?
Through the mayor, no, we do not.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Skelly.
I wanted to clear up the same thing. Have we ever had accreditation for media in the City of Hamilton?
Through the mayor, my understanding to that is no. The only reference was made previously by a political staff person under a former mayor that the concept might exist, and it was never actioned, and I've publicly stated that I don't agree with it as a policy.
Thank you.
Okay.
And if I may just make a comment, if I may, on
Okay.
accreditation?
On the item, yeah.
Oh, sorry, and if I could just make a comment. I've seen this often in social media and references to media accreditation in the City of Hamilton being revoked. I remember when I was part of the media and the media room was being renovated, and there was some sort of sense that media accreditation once again had been revoked and certain media had been expelled from the city chambers or the room. I just wanted to say that in my experience, I covered a lot of council meetings, and I was never given media accreditation. There's no such thing as a media accreditation in the City of Hamilton, therefore media accreditation cannot be revoked. And when the media room was renovated, we all had access to it as soon as it was renovated and the doors were reopened. just for the record. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. A question? Okay, quick. Well, he was going to move to receive the document, so.
Yeah, just for clarification, in camera, the media isn't entitled to those personal or confidential discussions, is that correct?
Through you to the council, through the mayor to the councilor, I'm sorry, that they would be included in those? Would
well,
not, no.
Would not be.
No, if it's an in-camera.
So I'm just trying to understand where the charter comes in as opposed to in-camera discussions, because to me, it's almost like using a sledgehammer to make a point. I'm trying to understand when we have tribunals, especially, that may end up dealing with in-camera because they're dealing with personal issues or legal issues, that there is a protection understood under the charter.
So again, it comes down to that balancing, right, in terms of what can be broadcast, the balancing of those rights. So the chair will always try and strike that balance between those rights.
And in this case, do we know if this is an in-camera item?
I don't have that information. It ultimately would be in the chair's decision, which I don't believe has been released at this point. So I'd have to wait and
That's
see.
the Andrews Gutter.
Yeah.
Through the chair.
Andrea?
Through the chair, Councillor, my understanding from the legal team is that in addition to the in-camera components that may be considered, there's a series of criteria that have been laid out where members of the public would be allowed to stay to listen, and because it's quasi-judicial and people are giving testimony, we want people to feel like they can be open, they won't be prejudiced against, there's no further ramifications, there's not disclosure of private information, and so they likened it to, while yes, you might attend a court proceeding that is open to the public, take notes and write about it, you aren't necessarily broadly enabled to arrive at a provincial court and set up a camera and record it and broadcast it. So that was the scenario that was given to me for context.
Appreciate the clarification. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moved by Councillor Ferguson, or do you have a question as well?
Just move to be received.
Moved by yourself, seconded by Councillor Vanderbeek. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Councillor Vanderbeek, a motion on the communications, please.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Brenda Johnson, that Council Communications 5.1 to 5.8 be approved as presented as follows. You don't want me to read them.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Councillor Pearson, a motion to move into committee of the whole for the consideration of the committee reports with Councillor Donna Skelly in the chair.
Thank you, Mr.